Okay, we're at Asherwood Nature Preserve today. Asherwood is owned by Marion Community Schools, but managed by Acres Land Trust. And in the next couple years, or somewhere in 2024, ownership will transfer to Acres, but currently owned by Marion Community Schools and managed by Acres. So this is a working maple syrup farm, for lack of a better term there. So they do tap the maple trees here and then boil down the sap to make maple syrup. So this little shed here is where they boil down all the sap, making the syrup. But it's about 160 acres, about 2.5 miles of trails. So as we see things, I'll go ahead and record, but between some of the trails, then I'll go ahead and turn the camera off. So as I mentioned, this is currently owned by Marion Community Schools, and it does see a lot of field trips from some of the local schools come out here. There's an activity center that's pretty modern, but there's also this outdoor classroom. So we're gonna take a walk down here to this outdoor classroom. Just give it a little look. All right, so here we go. Got a couple of benches here and a podium there for an outdoor classroom. So as you can see, outdoor classrooms, right, a little tricky, because if you don't keep up with them, nature takes over, and you have all these trees growing up between the benches now. And so you're left with kind of this challenge of land management. What do? Do you chop down the trees so that you can keep an outdoor classroom that gets used a couple days a year? Or do you just let nature take over? That's always a challenge in land management, is how much accessibility versus how much natural you want in a piece of land. But anyway, so here's an outdoor classroom here. I'll head back up on the trail and keep hiking. So right here we have a piece of pink granite in the ground. That is not native. I don't think there's much granite that was formed in Indiana. And up here we've got a piece of it actually looks kind of pink as well. It's just kind of covered with lichen and such. Some more over here, but these granite boulders, if you notice, they are rounded edges, right? They don't have any sharp edges on them. A couple more along the trail here. These are glacial erratics. So in one of the ice ages that covered Indiana, as the glaciers progressed from Canada down to Indiana, they picked up these giant pieces of granite from Canada, northern Michigan, Wisconsin, and so on, and just rolled them all the way down here to Indiana. And so as the glaciers retreated, they didn't pull these pieces of granite with them back. So they got deposited here. And they're rounded because they were basically rolled to Indiana from Canada, right? And so that polished and rounded them a bit. So you're not going to see sharp corners unless there's been somebody has broken the rock. But glacial erratics. So if you see rocks that don't look like they belong, and you're familiar with boundaries on ice ages, pretty good chance that they were put there by the glaciers. Okay, more hiking. Okay, we got a little bit of a boardwalk with a bridge here, going over Asher Creek. Asher Creek, right? We're at Asherwood, named for each other there. I'm guessing the creek was probably here first, but I'm not entirely sure about that. But nice little boardwalk. I'll take a slow panoramic here so you can see the creek. Kind of turn. Some nice wetlands down here around the creek as well. You can see evidence of other dry creek beds. So I'm guessing in the spring, when you have a lot of rain and winter melt, you get some of these things flowing a little bit, but probably dry most of the year. Anyway, we're coming up here to this bridge, so I just thought this might be a nice view for you while we're hiking. See the bridge up here. Now, again, do a slow turn here so you can see Asher Creek. I don't know if the microphone picks up the sound of the riffles underneath me, but this is a nice little spot. Anyway, onward for some more hiking. Take a little trek out here to Frog Pond. You see there's a dock and some benches out here. Frog Pond is frozen over right now. Probably won't see many frogs, but it is a nice view of this little pond. We'll come out here for a minute, take a look around. Frog Pond. As I said, you can see it's frozen over right now. It doesn't look like it's frozen very solid. There's some spots in the ice. But Frog Pond. So I just want to take a second. In a couple of my videos and some of my photos, we've looked at Multiflora Rose before. And so here's why it's such a problem. So we can see here, we've got a bunch of this purplish reeds, stalks, Multiflora Rose. But if you look, they connect down and it gets into this pretty big woody piece. And so what's happening here is, I don't know how well this will show up on video, but the Multiflora Rose is just drowning out this other bush. My ID skills for bushes aren't quite good enough, so I'm not sure in the winter what this other bush is, but it's just getting taken over by the Multiflora Rose. And so when the Multiflora Rose leafs out, that'll block the sunlight from this native bush here. I don't know, maybe it's not a native bush, maybe this is another invasive as well. But anyway, but this is what happens, right? So we have this huge Multiflora Rose patch that's just taking over all of these other bushes and trees in this area. So that's what it does, and that's what most invasives do. That's what makes them invasive. Okay, so just wanted to point that out so you see why I talk about that being a bad thing. So I just want to show you something in the video because it's not going to show up well in pictures, but not entirely sure if these are turkey tail or false turkey tail mushrooms, but they are just completely taking over these downed trees. I tried getting pictures of this, but it is so difficult to just see all the mushrooms here. Again, they're either turkey tail or false turkey tail, I'm not sure. But just they are just completely covering some of these downed logs. It's amazing. Pictures just would not, I just couldn't get all of this in a picture. Maybe, I thought maybe a video would do a little bit better. So I thought I'd take the video. Back to hiking. There's a lot of people who don't like hiking in the winter. It's cold. It's not too cold today, upper 30s. You don't see any wildflowers. You don't see the leaves changing color. Everything is just kind of brown. That's true. I'm not gonna argue with that. However, when you see with no leaves on the trees, you can see all the way across the forest, and you get views that you wouldn't get otherwise, right? If you come out here in spring or summer when all these trees are covered in leaves, you cannot see the creek from this spot. All you see is the green leaves, right? And that view itself is a nice view. But this is why it's important, I think, that any place you go hiking, you should go there regularly. Not just, don't go just in the spring or just in the fall, right? Go year round and see, and you'll start to see things in different seasons that in the other seasons are blocked, right? So maybe in the spring there's a patch here of ephemeral spring flowers, right, that are just open for a couple of days, maybe a week. Well, you don't see those in the winter, but in the winter you can see through the trees and get some views that you don't get in the spring or in the summer. Right, so any place you go hiking, check it out in different seasons. So I showed you earlier in the video some Multiflora Rose. What I have here is a patch of black raspberries. Well, raspberries. I'm not entirely sure that they're black raspberries, but that's likely. It can be difficult to tell the difference, right? Because here we have these shoots, these branches here that are kind of purplish and have thorns on them. The difference is this definitely has kind of a powdery coating, and if you follow the branches down, these shoots down, they don't really go into a woody bush, right? They just go down into the ground. So that's one way in the winter you can tell apart Multiflora Rose and raspberries. But over here we have some Multiflora Rose, right? And so if you look, as these go down, they all sort of branch off and they go down, and you get a woody stem, almost a bush. And so right here is Multiflora Rose and raspberries. Right, again, it's hard to tell them apart sometimes. They both have this purplish shoots with thorns. The difference is the raspberry generally doesn't branch very much. It's got kind of a powdery coating, and if you follow it down to the ground, it might get thick, but it usually each one usually goes into the ground. Whereas if you follow the Multiflora Rose, it branches a lot, and it usually goes down, particularly if it's established, it'll go down into a woody part, into a woody stem. So here's a good spot where we have both of them. It's a good place to point out the difference between the two. More hiking. So we're up here at a pond. I think this pond might be called Duck Pond, but don't quote me on that one. I'm not entirely sure about that. The dock here looks a little rickety, but I'm gonna trust it. Guess if I fall in, it'll make for good video. Dock is making some noise as I walk on it. But here we go. Out here looking over the pond. Okay. What I want to show you, what caught my eye, is over here. You can see we've got some animal tracks here. So something was on here when it was a little bit slushy, but it was enough to support, the ice was thick enough to support the weight, but a little bit slushy there. Trying to look at those prints. I'm gonna guess raccoon. They look bigger than squirrel. And they kind of look hand-shaped. So it's probably raccoon prints there. But I just sort of thought that was interesting. It caught my eye. How the ice was slushy enough to leave footprints, but solid enough that whatever the critter was, it did not fall in, at least not where I can see. So I'm almost done hiking here at Asherwood. Again, owned by Marion Community Schools, managed by Acres, but in 2024, ownership will change. Just climbed up steep hill here to get to the top, get this nice view. Okay, well, since I'm almost done hiking here, this will likely be the last video. So I just want to thank you for taking a hike with me and enjoy my other videos.